When it is time to defend your life and the life of your partner, you have to make an individual decision on the use of deadly force. Hi everyone, welcome to today's badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection, where every day we post a real-life use of force caught on camera and analyze it for lessons learned so that your training and practice can be more research informed. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from the Valley of the Sun, Phoenix, Arizona.
Today's video is brought to us by Mantis. The Mantis family of products is integral to ASP staff building handgun and carbine skills and are your most economical and fastest path to improvement in your skills too. Whether you choose the X10, the Laser Academy, the Blackbeard, or use them all in concert, they will help your practice be more effective, efficient, and fun. Go check them out, pick up a unit, and thank them for sponsoring today's video. Officers are responding here to a home invasion call with suspect on scene. So the lady says he's leaving in a silver pickup truck. They find that silver pickup truck as they show up and initiate a felony stop. Well, then our dude is going to decide to run at that point, so they are going to go on ye olde high-speed pursuit. Well, eventually that high-speed pursuit is going to come to an end because he's going to wreck that truck up into like a front wall, which these are very common in Phoenix, these kind of walls around the yard. And he's going to wreck it up. Officers are going to get out and confront him. Let's listen in. We have two badge cams to see what happens.
He's stuck in here, bro. He's stuck in here. Peter, hold. Hey, let me see your fucking hands. I'll fucking shoot you. Hold, bro. Get cover, bro. Get cover. Let me see your fucking hands. Let me see your fucking hand. He's got a gun, bro. Drop the fucking gun. Drop the gun. Drop the. Back up. Chill. Chill. Don't grab the gun! 411 Mary, 998. Get cover, get back. Get a car up here! Peter, I'll fucking shoot you! Hold, bro. Get cover, bro. Get cover. 409, he wrecked out 15th Avenue rear. He's inside the car, struggling. He's got a gun. Drop it now! Drop it now! He's got a... Drop the gun! Back up. Chill.
What are you guys doing?
Don't grab the gun! Get cover. Get back. Get a car up here. Get a car up here.
Our felonious absconder had two pistols on him. You saw him drop one a couple times, point the other one at the cops. He didn't make it. They gave him medical aid at the scene. He took the side yard temperature challenge. No officers were hurt here. They did note that he found an AR pistol in his truck as well, but it didn't come into play in the event. You know, I just don't understand why some people do what they do. It's like, hey, there's a bunch of cops here. I'm going to play a little bit of, hide and seek and then keep the gun in my hand.
Yeah, slap and tickle, as my father would have said.
Slap and tickle. I bet you it didn't tickle so much.
No.
Mike, it's pretty rare that the cops actually get there in time to stop a home invader before he leaves. I do think it's a good reminder, though, when the chase starts here, that it's a good time to be aware and cautious with your heart rate, with your arousal level, to keep your heart rate down and to stay in that thinking brain so that you can make great decisions. These officers, I think, really did make great decisions. And so staying as calm as you can to make those good decisions will help you when the chips are down.
Absolutely. We theorized before we hit the record button here that this may have been a field training officer and a newer officer working in tandem. I kind of got that sense from some of the direction, giving a lot of direction. Anyway, with that said, this is something that FTO should be teaching newer deputies and officers is, look, you're up against something bad. You've gotten the call. The call is armed person, attempted home invasion. You show up, matches the description, then he runs. So you're reasonably certain you're on a high-speed pursuit after someone who is armed and Therefore, doesn't have a lot to lose. He thinks he's going to prison, so he's maybe going to shoot it out with you. So this is the time for you to practice your combat breathing, calm yourself down, and prepare yourself for any eventuality. It's something I think doesn't get talked about enough in field training officer classes, but maybe it's something that should be talked about more.
Remember that box breathing, right? That combat breathing. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. I love that our officer shows up here. This was some really good use of the pistol-mounted light. So both these officers used their pistol-mounted lights and used them well. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. I feel like we don't see that nearly often enough. I will say, though, we're going to see a couple of times here, Mike, that using the spill, so you can see a really bright hot spot in the middle here. This is a good light. And then a nice wide spill. And that if he had used that spill a little bit more, he would have not pointed a gun at his partner when his partner runs through his backstop. So excellent use here. This is a tiny, tiny little thing for me to give him a hard time about, and I'm not trying to give him a hard time, but use that spill as well so that you're not pointing guns at stuff you're not ready to shoot.
Yeah, another thing, by the way, I have nothing to add to that. That's great advice. I would say this. Realize when you have a really good weapon-mounted light, which this appears to be a very bright light with really good throw, a nice little cone, and then a ton of spillover, so it's great for the job that he's doing. Bear in mind that if you're shining that at a bright surface like this silver, I think it's silver or gray truck, you're actually reducing your own vision a little bit by doing that. The reflection off of that is actually harming you. So if you can avoid it, avoid it. I would say if you're gonna aim in, I would actually point it towards the mirror. That's going to have more effect on blinding your suspect than pointing it, at the B pillar or C pillar, whichever one that is, or through that really heavy tint. But what you said earlier about using the spill to avoid accidentally pointing a gun at your partner, all you can do is try, right? That sort of thing in a dynamic situation like this where all hell's breaking loose, it's going to accidentally happen sometimes. The best you can do is hope to mitigate that by, like John said, by using your spill and trying to avoid that. But like I said, in the real world, unfortunately, it's going to happen from time to time.
It will happen from time to time, but we want to minimize that because we want to practice the rules of safe firearms handling, right? Those 3 rules all the time, everywhere we go, to the maximum extent possible so that nobody gets injured. Also, I get asked from time to time, John, how bright is bright enough or too bright on a pistol-mounted light? A light is too bright if it has recoil or it catches things on fire. That's the only time you will want less light around. You would like a pocket sun. You want all of the illumination possible. And remember, it's washing things out here on the badge cam, but the human eye has so many more f-stops of ability to see than a camera does that if you practice with this a little bit, you'll be able to see a whole lot better the more light that you have on a situation, especially as your eyes get older. More light is more better. Now, I think our officers here, Mike, really showed some restraint because this dude drops a gun. All right, great, drop the gun and run away. But then he reaches over and picks it up. And I mean, clearly here we have somebody who is a suspect in a home invasion. We know he's armed. He is now picking a gun up and fleeing from officers. Every bit of Graham versus Connor here of using deadly force to stop a fleeing suspect is met. And if he'd have butthole checked this guy, I don't think I would have had a problem with it. And yes, here's another instance of us saying butthole check on the channel.
Yeah, I'd like to switch that up. I'm going to refer to it as a Bravo Hotel Charlie from now on, so I don't have to hear those words ever again. But yeah, Graham versus Connor's a thing. If you don't know what that is, look it up, Google it. It's a very interesting case wherein basically the outcome of the Supreme Court was decided on the perception of the officers at the time. A reasonable officer understands certain facts about a situation, observes certain things, and makes a decision based on the limited knowledge that he or she has in that moment. And that's really critical. And it's important for you to know that as a law enforcement officer. So if you haven't gotten enough schooling on that in your academy, it behooves you to kind of bone up on that sort of thing. And I agree with what John said here. He's met all the qualifications for getting shot at by the police. I think the fact that they showed restraint here is admirable. However, as John said, had they decided to shoot this guy right then and there, and yes, in the back, because that's the target presenting himself as he attempts to arm himself, would have been justified. But I think they were just trying to give this guy every chance they possibly could.
I really think, so Phoenix PD, not to put too fine a point on it, has been under investigation by the DOJ for too much use of force. And that's been over the last several years. And so are they kind of pushing those buttons pretty hard with Phoenix police officers to, not use force if they don't absolutely have to? Yeah, maybe. And again, here, this guy, as he's getting up, they're not recognizing here an imminent deadly threat that they have to use deadly force. So they can, if they choose to, but it's not a must. And I really think that that's a good distinction, that instead of can I, we should be talking about must I. And the officers gave this guy every chance. And whether that's because of pressure from the DOJ, I think they ended up filling this guy in. So I wouldn't say that was really where it is. I really think, though, that the vast majority of our police officers, Mike, are looking to avoid using deadly force, because when they do, they end up in the national news and on YouTube channels like ours, where hundreds of thousands of people get to critique their behavior.
Yeah. So what kind of videos do we do? John selects the videos that we cover, right? Excuse me. Based on what exactly? We're not generally showing a bunch of uneventful interactions between the police and the public, because that wouldn't be very useful. So these are mostly the outliers, or the things that we're covering here on this channel. Why do we choose this video? Because there's so many lessons in it, right? However, at the end of the day, we want videos that are going to help our viewers, both civilian, or excuse me, I should say civilian, but law enforcement and non-law enforcement, to understand how these things work. Had he shot him here, he would have been justified in doing so. However, he didn't. What I want to be careful is not sort of endorsing this wait until you absolutely have to. If you feel like you're in danger, look, this guy could get up with that gun, turn around, and bust off a round. And we all know crooks get lucky all the time, right? They're not necessarily training at the range; they just get lucky. So if he turns and shoots at this moment and catches you between the eyes, well, that's game over. So there has to be a balance there. I don't want you to be so overly cautious you end up getting yourself shot.
Absolutely not. And so I want to say, had he chosen to at this moment, would have been 100% justified. He chose not to. I'm not questioning his decision making here. That's in his mind, what he perceived and the decisions that led him to. And I haven't read the IA investigation or the criminal investigation, so I can't tell you what he was thinking in the moment. I'm just saying, had he been more, apt to use the force earlier, I wouldn't have had a problem with it because of the facts of the circumstances. Now, dude decides instead that he is kind of trapped here. My guess is, Mike, that he figured out that, oh no, I'm trapped in this side yard. I can't keep running. So now he turns around with a gun in his hand, and now the threat goes up significantly. This is not even can I or should I, but no, this is a guy turning and facing cops with a gun in his hand who we know is a violent felon. So now our chances to do anything else are over, and now our shooting skills come into play, and the officers did a pretty darn good job there too.
Yeah, one of John's, I might have gotten it from me, I'm not sure. One of his favorite sayings is, look, you put the quarter in the jukebox, you got to dance the whole song. This guy did not put a quarter in a jukebox. He put his entire life savings in the jukebox and then turned with a firearm towards police officers that were clearly pursuing him. We don't need to know. We cannot possibly hope to discern his intention in this moment. All we know is he's backed into a corner, he's armed, and now he's turning to face us. This is a point. This is a must. This is I absolutely must, right? This is not a can I or should I. This is I must, to defend my life and to keep this guy from escaping and doing his home invasions or whatever another day. I'm forced now to use deadly force. And I think that's what we're seeing here clearly is he left the officers no choice. Doesn't matter why he turned around with a gun, and this is what ends up happening.
All right, I guess I got to come up with my own because Mike says that I'm stealing from him. So I'm just going to say this guy put all the Chuck E. Cheese tokens in the skee ball machine, so he gets to cash in the tickets, and he gets to win the prize from those tickets. And that's a John Correa original. You can take that one to the bank, and maybe I'll use that in future videos as well. I totally agree with what you said, Mike. They cannot wait any longer at this point, unless their lives are going to be forfeit if they do. So you got to fill this guy in. Now, I do think it's interesting that the officer, he's like, okay, wait, that's enough, chill. And then dude fills him in some more. I will say interesting here, Mike, and worth talking about, that it seems that the officer whose badge cam we're watching right now, he does not fire, whereas the other officer did. I actually really liked that. What that tells me is that each officer is making independent decisions. That's not to say if they both fired that they didn't make independent decisions, but the fact of the matter is that the officer whose badge cam we are on is not seeing a deadly threat and firing. The officer who's not on badge cam, we'll see it in a minute, he did see a deadly threat and therefore fired. And that tells me they're making good independent decisions to defend life.
Yeah, listen, contagious fire is a thing, right? It happens. We've seen it on the channel a bunch of times where one officer or deputy is firing and another officer or deputy who does not know why they're shooting starts to shoot, right? Because they figure my partner's shooting in that direction, there must be a threat, so I'm going to shoot too. Not okay. You need to, as a law enforcement officer, you need to have independent knowledge that there is a deadly threat. You can't rely on your partner shooting, meaning there's a deadly threat. This is a really good case study of how one officer who's just a foot or two away can perceive something the other doesn't. Of course, we don't know, as John said, what this officer perceived, but it looks to me like what John said is accurate. He did not see the need for deadly force in this split second. In this moment, the other one did and fired. So this is what we want to see, not shooting or not shooting. We want to see officers making independent decisions, coming to their own conclusion. Yes, this is a deadly threat. Unambiguously, I need to act now, versus relying on their partner shooting to decide, okay, well, there must be a threat. That's not okay.
Really good work by both of them here and making those independent decisions. Also, what's on the camera is not what the officer is seeing and not what the officer is perceiving and acting on. So that's worth definitely thinking about. Now, our second officer here, he runs around the front of the vehicle. I get what he's trying to do. He's trying to get himself into position. And by now, Mike, he's got himself in a good L-shaped ambush position. But I do think it's worth remembering that he did run right through his partner officer's line of fire. In order to get there, he ran right through his backstop. Now, when skating on thin ice, our safety lies in our speed. However, I would prefer, if we can, and we're thinking about that, hey, where's my partner and which direction is he pointing that gun? I don't want to run through it if I can help it.
Yeah, there's a ton of variables here. We don't know what the officer saw. As John said, what the camera sees is not necessarily what the officer sees. And so what I would have preferred, instead of trying to get up where he is by the driver door, is for him to go to the rear of the vehicle and cover off on the other side of the vehicle. That way, no matter which side of the car the guy comes out, we're ready for him. And mind you, what you saw here is really good mental rep, by the way. Don't assume that a vehicle occupied one time by a driver, don't assume if the driver gets out, it's going to be through the driver's door, right? Be ready for this. And I think that the driver, the bad guy, almost certainly was thinking, well, I'll get an extra step or two if I go out the passenger door. And as it turns out, he was right. He did get an extra step or two, but not enough steps, unfortunately for him.
Well, and notice that our driver went out the back door because he had wrecked up the front driver's door. My guess is he couldn't get that door open, that it was jammed up. So he went out the back door and then jumped out the other side when he's like, oh, never mind. I got to go get out into a spot where I'm not going to get shot up by the cops. Newsflash, he's going to get shot up by the cops anyways. Now, just that idea of perception again. I want to train you all, and not only the officers here, but our private citizens. Remember that distinction, public servant, private citizen, we're all civilians. Recognizing that what I see on the camera here looks to me like a guy who is rolled over and is pointing a gun at the cop. And again, if the officer had perceived that and used deadly force there, it would not have bothered me. But I want to recognize that what we see on the badge cam is not necessarily what the officer sees through their Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeballs. And what they perceive and how they act on those perceptions is what's important. So it's a real limitation of the badge cams. And I just want us to not get wrapped around the axle that the officer did see what the badge cam saw, Mike.
Yeah, it's a really good point. The human eye is going to see far better than this probably 1080p, 720p camera, right? So this officer is observing this all going down, by the way, really quickly in a very compressed amount of time, and he has to make very rapid decisions. I'm certain that had he perceived this to be a threat to his partner, he almost certainly would have fired to try to eliminate that threat. That's not what he saw. He saw what he saw, and what he sees and what the badge cam sees are frequently very different things.
It's just worth keeping in mind, because sometimes we say, well, the badge cam didn't see X. Well, that doesn't mean that what he saw. So, and we don't always hear at Active Self-Protection. In fact, we seldom get to read the investigation. We seldom get to actually see the interview with the officer, what their perceptions were. Those officers are seldom given cognitive interviews to get really good designed solutions there. These are all things that Force Science talks about all the time. It's the reason I'm a Force Science ambassador, because of the research that they do. Now, this officer chases this guy, cops chase bad guys down holes, and now he gets after him. And I want to note those last 5 shots, Mike. I think this officer did a darn good job, but I'm going to give him a little bit of the business here. Because, Mike, can you think of why he might have been firing with one hand on the gun with 5 very fast rounds?
Was he scratching his nose? Was he thinking about what he would do next? No, we know what he was doing, John. John, tell the people what he was doing.
He was talking on his radio, or he wanted to talk on his radio. Remember, when you're in the middle of a gunfight, just fight the gunfight. Win the gunfight in the moment, and then deal with the radio later. You've got all the units on scene that are going to solve the problem that you possibly can get on scene. Deal with the problem first, talk on the radio once you can figure out what help do I need that can get here in the next 5 minutes. And again, this officer did a fine job, but those 5 shots, I'm telling you, I'm a pretty good shooter, and 5 one-handed shots at sub-quarter second splits, you gotta be a master to grandmaster level shooter to get good hits at this 6 or 7 yards one-handed at those splits and guarantee them. You put two hands on the gun, that becomes much more doable. So leave the radio alone until you know that you're done with the fight. Fight the fight first, win the fight first, communication comes later. So it's a small thing, and he handled his business. Now I wanna talk about the last shot, because I know some people are gonna think about that. His badge cam here really shows what the last shot was about, Mike. And one of the things that I want us to see here as he's kind of sitting here, now watch what goes down. We're gonna stop it here for just a second and then zoom it in. Now watch his arm move towards the gun that he has dropped. And when he moves towards that gun, that's when the officer with two hands on the gun puts one more shot on the guy to completely stop his behavior. So again, we didn't see that on the first officer's badge cam because it was washed out because of the pistol mounted light. But on this one, we did get to see it. And therefore, again, what the officer perceives and how he acts on that is super critical important. Did he need to fire this last shot? My answer to that, Mike, is yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I know there's going to be some people, and they're not wrong, who are objecting and saying, well, maybe, he's in his death throes or he's injured terribly and he's just sort of moving around, in agony and pain. Listen, that very well may be the case. We'll never know because the guy didn't make it. However, as the officer, you can't hope that's what's happening, right? Hope's not a strategy. You have to act based on what you're seeing in the moment. And I think the fact that John catches this stuff really well, by the way, he's good at his job. Catching that the other officer didn't perceive that because of his weapon mounted light sort of washing things out. And this officer did see it and acted. And on top of that he did that last shot, which was justified, and the other officer didn't feel the need to jump in and do something unnecessary because my partner's shooting, I must be shooting too. I think he handled it really, really well. John, you want to wrap us up here?
I think they did a great job here. These officers controlled their emotions. They used their pistol-mounted lights really excellently. They responded to what was in front of them. I think they used very judicious levels of force, and these dudes covered their asp.